softest go. Are we on?
We're on.
Okay. Welcome. This is just an opportunity for myself, along with Nicole, your TA, and Jeremy Azell, who was a student in this assessments class 2 years ago, to talk to you a little bit about the work of Stephen Finn. And I know you've been doing some reading and watching the videos. I'm just going to open up and say, when I first came across Stephen Finn's work, one of the pieces that just resonated so much with me was the fact that oftentimes assessments are one of those things that we use more like in a screening sense. So we look at like maybe a Beck depression and we say, oh, the person's not suicidal, and we stick it in the back of the chart and we never look at the assessments again. And what Stephen Finn did for me was like challenge me to see that the assessments that we use with our clients have a lot more life than just as quick screenings to rule out things like suicide, and then we bury them in the back of the chart, and they never have any more voice. And the term therapeutic assessment is just a beautiful term, because it really says that there's a lot of work that can be done around assessments with our clients. And so then I think he tries to unpack a whole strategy around how to do that. So let me just turn it over to you and ask each of you for like maybe an introductory comment around Stephen Finn's work as you've experienced it.
You can go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, sure. Thanks. I think for me, it has a lot to do with the emphasis on the collaborative process and the therapeutic relationship, and essentially buy-in. As I was kind of reviewing the work, I was thinking about how meaningful that is, a much more meaningful experience for the client when they have the opportunity to, when it's a collaborative, and that they are able to have that, if they feel safe and trusting of the relationship. I think even in the assessment process, we're more likely to get, a more thorough, assessment accomplished, more information, as well as when it comes time to delivering results and talking with clients, that if they have that buy-in, because you've built the relationship and they are part of the process, that they're going to be able to absorb whatever it is that you're discussing with them easier, I believe. And it's just a more meaningful experience, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Jeremy, as you share a few comments, just tell all the students that will be watching this YouTube who you are and where you are in the doctoral program too.
Yeah. So Jeremy Azell. I'm down in Austin, Texas, which is where Stephen Finn is. And and I think I realized that I'm trying to think what it was that we read, what publication we read, and I realized, this gentleman's just down the road. And it's actually a really funny story. When I met with him and we collaborated, the building that I am currently sitting in, where my office is where his first office was in Austin.
Wow.
You are seeing hollowed ground. This exact office wasn't his, but the one right below us is where he started the therapeutic assessment practice,
cool.
Which was hilarious. We had a great time talking about that. But in the doctoral program, I am, I'm all but dissertation. So I've sent in my rough draft of the first chapter and a half, couple of chapters. I need to work on my lit review, but I sent that to Dr. Sells, and we're going back and forth on some of that stuff. And so I'm past comps, I'm past all the gauntlets. It's now just me and my self-determination to finish, which is a great feeling. So regarding the therapeutic assessment, the thing that really, to echo what Nicole, you were saying, the word that comes to my mind is the humanity of it. And so when I think about the particular couple that he and I collaborated with, that was very much needed. The humanity piece, like it wasn't it was a couple, and the wife was extremely afraid. She'd had some assessments before, actually, and they were a bit inhumane in her experience of it. And so she was pretty skeptical, had to talk with her a little bit about it. But once they met with Dr. Finn, and they actually drove in from out of town, they were from a neighboring metroplex, and just the humanity of walking through that process with him, seeing Dr. Finn and then the other two psychologists that were being trained by Dr. Finn, And so they use this as a training case, ran the full battery of assessments. So we can get into some of that later. But the main thing that really stuck with me in the class, and then also working with him, was just absolutely how therapeutic and just how human it was. It was very, and we can get into some of this later, but how important and how key that was for both the husband and wife in that. It completely changed the work.
Yeah. I remember too resonating with that, and when all my assessment work that I had done even before exposure to Finn, I don't know how I landed on this. I think I just landed on my own, but I often would find myself spending time with like families, especially like parents, if I was testing a child, trying to debunk and demystify these assessments, like, the IQ score or something like that, and always trying to like help them understand that this isn't like this like secret set of magic tricks that the therapist has, and we're only going to reveal to you like that, like this wow outcome, and it's going to be this magical stuff that we have. And so trying to let the client into the process of the assessments has just always naturally resonated with to me as the right thing to do. And so when I read his work, I think, I went, wow, yeah, someone else is actually saying that. But what he did, of course, was he'd had a process on how to do it. And some of it I was following just, again, serendipitously, but some of it I really like learned from, right? And so one of the things that I recall really learning was almost like that Johari window kind of thing. Like when I will sit down right before I do the debriefing with the client, I'll say, now, if there's likely going to be some things on here that I'm going to say that your report says, and you're going to go, oh yeah, that's me. And then there's going to be some other things that are going to stretch you, but you're going to be able to see it with a little bit of stretch. And then there's going to be some other things that you're not going to really see at all that this assessment's telling you. And these last two boxes are where you're going to probably find yourself doing predominantly a lot of the work, and it's going to challenge you the most. And just even being able to set the table like that is so helpful to the client, rather than just delving right in, and then they have this, and you've not normalized any of these potential like big brand new concepts that are going to be landing on their lap. And so, I find that just how the process of how Stephen Finn is helping the client think about the assessment process, even before they take the assessments, right? Like warming them up to the whole idea of it, has it's that humanity piece. It's the client is now invested in the assessment process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that, my patients really appreciated, and is both of them very skeptical in some different ways, of just how it didn't label them. They were afraid of being labeled and given this pejorative kind of thing, and like painfully boxed in as a human being. And I mean, he was a lot of fun to watch. Quite honestly, it was pretty great. So,
Jeremy, I'm wondering, as you had a chance to work with Dr. Finn, can you follow up on that a little bit? Like what when you say he was fun to watch, just what intrigued you?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that really comes to my mind was some of his, like some of the recordings that we watched in class, were a bit earlier on, but I found him in the recordings to be a little bit dry. Like, he's very instructive and that kind of stuff. But in the room, he was very animated. He was just delightful, yet also like was very assertive, but very kind, self-disclosing to a point on one particular part that was, I think, really key for this woman. He teared up. He leaned in. He was would like regulate his voice in it. Yet at the whole time, it was all centered around the assessment. It wasn't a therapy session, but it was it was therapeutically intense. And as we followed up, and I need to actually reach out to him again, because we had a lovely time, and I'd like to just kind of have lunch with him and talk with him. But he told me at the end because I debriefed with him and both psychologists that were doing training, and then we followed up afterward for some aftercare and just some follow-up things. And so I communicated with all three of them over the phone and via email and stuff, and all of them said this was particularly hearing Dr. Finn say this is the hardest case he's ever worked on in his career. I was like, okay, that makes me feel better because I felt overwhelmed. But even the way that he really kind of walked with me in it, as the therapist, and helped me understand. Of course, he knew I knew some of what therapeutic assessment was about and kind of what they were doing, but just he was very kind. So yeah, I mean, I could probably go on about that, but yeah, for sake of time. But he was just a lovely human being, and not dry at all. I mean, he was very intense.
Yeah, the tapes probably are a little instructional dry. I'm glad. Yeah. Nicole, as you think back to like last year when you were going through this class and you were coming up to this piece that the students now are coming up to, where they're going to have to sit with each other and have these MMPI RFs and have an interview and kind of process trying to use some of these Finn techniques and procedures. What do you remember about your experience, and what would you say to the students that are getting ready to do this?
Well, those are great questions. I would say it was a very meaningful experience for me. I mean, I know the idea is it's a learning, and we're just trying to apply new techniques, but there was because we're going over our own results, there's personal learning and growth as well, and so it was a very meaningful experience in that way. As well as when I was working with my partner and talking about their results, it was meaningful in a different kind of way in that we're connecting. And so I feel like, I guess I was a little nervous thinking back to it. I was nervous about someone in my cohort seeing my results and talking with me about them. But in the end, I was very thankful for that, and that in those connections. And I feel like I connected to both the person, because I was in a trio actually, so the person I reviewed was different than who did mine, because it just worked out that way. But it was, it was. I would say, if anyone's feeling nervous, to try to set that aside, and that it ended up being, it was good learning, and what I was nervous about ended up not being relevant at all, and it was just very meaningful. So,
yeah, I don't. Again, I'm not sure whether I really planned this, but what I've experienced in probably the 3 go-arounds now that I've done this is that anxiety. I've had students write personal reflections about this experience, and sometimes the personal reflections that come back is, that anxiety I had thinking about somebody else looking at my MMPI. I realized all of a sudden, hey, wait, this is exactly what Finn's talking about. I need to feel like how the client is feeling around these assessments. And so there's a little bit of an arc back in this experience that I think is just very connecting to what Stephen's trying to do in his approach, and help us to really be empathic and humanistic and caring with our clients as we talk about their assessments. Well, I want to keep this YouTube to a very brief time, so I'm going to just ask for any last thoughts that any of us have on this, and then we'll end this. Anything?
Yeah, the last thing I would say, again, to just echo how important it is, that the therapeutic assessment really allows the person to be a person. And for my case, the couple that I worked with, they really, especially the wife, she really needed that. She had been wounded by some other assessments, and they did a full battery and a full intensive. It took them 10 days. They went through everything with Stephen Finn and his crew. They did projective testing, they did MMPIs, they did all these things. And she had some significant things in her story that on her MMPI 2RF indicated something that she had then been labeled, and that wasn't the case. And by understanding the whole context of the whole story, that Finn really sat in with that, of the trauma that she had been through, helped her to understand you are not what you've been labeled. And to have one of the best people in the entire world, literally, he was traveling around to Japan right after that, help her understand you're not crazy. You're not what other people have told you. This is a part of your story, and this is why this shows up this way on this assessment. It changed her life. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It changed your life.
Yeah, great, awesome. That's a good way to end. Okay.
All finished?
Nicole? Yeah.
Okay.